Hello, my name is Adam. Welcome to my series called True Crime Tuesday, where I review content which is connected to true crime. I'm working through a series of books by Ryan Green. The collection is called 12 from Hell 2, and this particular one is called Gorilla Killer, a true story of betrayal, brutality, and butchery. And it depicts the life of a man named Earle Leonard Nelson, who was also known as the Gorilla Man, the Gorilla Killer, and the Dark Strangler. And he lived from 1897 to January 13th, 1928. And he was hung for the murder of a woman in Winnipeg, or two women in Winnipeg. And so basically, he was one of the first famous serial killers in the United States in the early part of the 20th century. So that's why he is most notable. And he kind of had a sort of religious mania. Both of his parents were killed by syphilis when he was very, very young, and he was sent to live with his maternal grandmother. So obviously, syphilis can be passed from mom to child. So it's possible that that had some kind of effect on his brain. But also, he was hit by a streetcar when he was 10, and he was like riding a bike and he was hit by the streetcar. So that also may have had an effect on his brain. So I think that this book is not as successful as Green's other books for two reasons. One, this is the second or third book where I've read of his where he doesn't have the modern records, and his style is basically to write from the killer's perspective, but there are no modern records from the killer. So, how do we know exactly what the killer's perspective was? So, that's been a problem with other books too. And the second problem with the book is that this man was clearly mentally ill. So there's no other explanation for it, and there doesn't need to be another explanation for the man's crimes. So he was institutionalized when he was younger because clearly his family and his teachers saw that there was something wrong with him. And during the First World War, um, he also signed up for various services, um, and he either quit or he was thrown out of them because he didn't have the mental capacity to be in the army or in the navy or whatever service he was in. And also, it's like a very, very small point, but I think it's important when you're writing biographies about people to be historically accurate. So Green mentioned something, and it's weird because he's actually British. So America, maybe that's why he made this mistake, is America entered the First World War in uh, 1917, and it took till 1918 before the troops actually arrived in any kind of significant numbers to sway the balance of power in the Western Front. But he mentioned something like, yes, they were going. So I forgot exactly how he phrased it, but basically that the Americans were going to be in for a long-term war because it would be last so long, but actually they were only in it for 1 year. But minor detail. But back to my original point is that I don't see how this book has any value because you are basically engaging in torture porn. So you're recounting, and I think maybe Green thought that it was okay because these victims lived 100 years ago, so they don't have any families left. But it's basically, and some of the books, it's been really, really chilling. Uh, and I think that there was another one where the man was clearly mentally ill. And so you are talking from the perspective of somebody who's mentally ill. And I think that this book was less egregious connected to that particular point than the last book, which was Vampire Killer, a terrifying true story of psychosis, mutilation, and murder. But so we have like two books in a row where the killer is clearly mentally ill, and that's the problem. But I don't think that there needs to be any strong condemnation of the psychiatric profession or whatever 100 years ago, because clearly it wasn't great. But even 100 years ago, they knew that those two people were mentally ill and they should have been. Well, actually, the the last book that I mentioned, the man was active during the 1970s. So, but this one was 100 years ago. So, but they knew that they both were mentally ill. So I'm not sure why write the book. You know, like, isn't it enough? Like, why write the book from that perspective? Like, if you want to publicize Neil's actions, maybe write it from a third person perspective. Because for two reasons, as I mentioned, you don't know enough about his interior thoughts because he lived 100 years ago. And second, he was clearly mentally ill. So there's no point to that, in my opinion. But maybe you have a different opinion. Maybe you read this book. Maybe share your thoughts in the comment section. If you would like to support me, there's two ways that you can do that. The first way, I'm trying to have 100 subscribers by the end of Christmas. So I'm at 94 now. I think 6 is reasonable. If you like this content, please subscribe. And the other way is I have Patreon. Obviously, reviews like this are not going to be monetized on YouTube because, you know, advertisers don't generally like talking about murder and mutilation and all of that stuff. So if anybody signs up to the Patreon, I would like 50% of it to go to be determined in the future charity. But anyway, thank you for your time. Bye bye.